Hello, everybody. This is Joshua Hatton with One Nation Under Whiskey Podcast. I'm joined today, and I'm joined with the wonderful Jason Johnston Yellen, and together we are nosing a bottle of whiskey that we got pre-pandemic, like just at the beginning of pandemic or during pandemic. It says 2020 on there.
Yeah, I don't know why you're trying to ask questions about pandemic timing. We know none of it makes any sense. None at all. We'll go this far.
Yeah.
These hand-filled casks say bottled 2020. No month, no day of a month, no time of a day of a month. Just 2020, which is 2020. Kind of how 2020 feels, right? Oh, when did that happen in 2020?
In 2020.
It happened in 2020. I get you. I hear you.
So
that makes good sense.
So you and I, Jason, are enjoying a Glenmurray Distillery exclusive Sauterne cask from 2006, bottled in 2020. So 14 years in Sauterne. It doesn't say finish. So I have to assume...
Might just have been full maturation.
Full maturation.
What's your bottle number?
My bottle number on this is... Oh, geez. What's your bottle number?
I asked first.
77.
Mine says number 1.
No, it doesn't. Yours does not say number 1. You would not have opened it if it said number 1.
I absolutely would have opened it.
You would have?
I absolutely would have.
If it says bottle number 1?
But listen.
No.
Let's be clear with our listeners.
Yep.
The reason we are enjoying Glenmurray during today's recording is because we are recording this while Jess is at a Spirit of Speyside dinner at the distillery. And you, my friend, are sitting in Connecticut, and I am sitting in Virginia, and Jess is at the bloody distillery.
And our good friend, Jason, don't you laugh at me. Only laugh with me.
I love your use of and. That was excellent.
Our good friend Ian Allen, who is like Mr. Glenmurray. What's it? I know he's the visitor center manager, but he travels the world talking about Glenmurray doing the shows, right? So
it's a title that hasn't been updated since he was hired, 17
so the janitor
years ago or so. It's insane. He's got the run of the place.
But listen, Ian Allen's birthday was just a couple days ago, a couple days from this recording. So that's
cheapers creepers.
Yep. So there you go. So to Mr. Ian Allen,
happy birthday,
Ian.
How old is he?
Ian Allen has to be near our age. He's in his 40s.
And I learned that from you, Joshua. And if I am correct, and I'm dealing in the realm of memory, so I could be very wrong. If memory serves correct, this Sauternes that you just gave the distillation year for would have been distilled the year Ian started at the Visitor Center.
I think you are correct. 2006. So this is birthday upon birthday right here.
Look at this. This is Whiskey Inception.
Whiskey Inception, yeah. Did you bring your top with you? You just spin it?
Yes. It has been spinning for the first few minutes of this episode.
So let me ask you this, because we have got a lot to get to. Did you or did you not save an email to PDF to then print down off of your printer? No printing.
No printing. No printing. I have my PDF on my screen as we speak.
So you have an email in the chamber, ready to rock.
It's in the chamber, yes, sir.
I would love to hear. I want to hear from one of our listeners right now. Would you mind bringing that PDF up? Fucking PDF. Can we just take a minute? Again, PDFs. Go on.
I stand by it. Stand by it. If I told you the reason that this is being read at the top of the show is because this is the latest installment from the Ice Cream Man.
Ah, yes. Oh, I saw this email when it came in. And read it.
So this is why I convert them to PDF, because I want to get them out the info account as quick as I can, so you don't have a chance to see them.
I know.
So that I can surprise you on the podcast.
I know. Well, listen, I also don't. I've got the memory of a gnat these days, so there's a good chance I've forgotten a lot of what was written.
Not just the memory of a gnat. Moving on. The Ice Cream Man writes...
The wings of a gnat?
Dear J, and J. I'm reverting to my original salutation in this note and apologise if the, quote, guys from my last email was too abrupt. It sure sounded like it when I heard you read it back on wax. So, public service
Guys.
delivered. I was listening to Season 7, Episode 5 on a flight en route to Scotland and was horrified to find that my previous phonetic spelling of my last name was still confusing.
Yep.
You got the hey part in the first syllable correct.
Hey.
So we're off to a good start. The GEN part in the second syllable contains a hard G. So it's like the G in Glengoyne rather than giant.
Can I pause you there really quickly? I thought a hard G has the J sound, where the soft G has the G. Like G sounds much softer than J. Right? So hey, if it were a hard G, wouldn't it be hey Jen? And a soft G would be hey gen?
I really don't want to get inside the head of Joshua Hatton right now. It messes me up for days after I've been in there.
Really quick, gun to your head. Which sounds harder, G or J? It's the J.
I think G sounds harder.
No, you're wrong. Everybody's wrong.
J sounds softer to me. But I'm adjacent, so
but as a J,
I'm used to it being softer.
It's like you got hit with a rhythm stick, like J.
Oh, slow down there, Ian Jury. Simmer down.
Hit me with your rhythm stick. All right, go ahead.
So I think we can rightly assume that this is Hagen, not Hagen.
Yeah, Hagen.
Which we left the door open for last episode. But this is Hagen. Hagen.
With a soft
you know where
G.
you stand with Chris Hagen.
Yeah.
Chris Hagen, the Ice Cream Man. So there are two more paragraphs, and one of these paragraphs is the best paragraph I think we've ever read in the podcast.
Those, Jason, with a hard G, I think. J. Is it a hard J? Oh, wait, are you Jason? You Jason. That is quite the declarative statement.
Isn't it? And
it is.
1000% stand behind it.
I do too. Or my Nat's memory recollection of it. Go ahead. You read it. You read it.
I wish the listeners could have seen your face when I said 1000%, because it is not something we say around these parts.
We do not say it around these parts.
Ever.
Yeah. Listen, it
and
is
I just
what
threw
it is,
it right
Jason.
at you. All right. So the Ice Cream Man says, Chris Hagen says, I travelled to the west coast of Scotland with a couple of friends from my whiskey club in Chicago. And if you remember, the original installment of Chris's email was a tasting that he'd done and how it had gone and how people thought he was really, selling Single Cask Nation a la Tupperware We visited Oban, Ben Nevis, Ardnamurchan, Tobermory, Deanston and Glengoyne over the course of 4 days.
That's great.
So it was a whirlwind. He's not wrong. We had a blast. The weather was perfect and the people were so welcoming. Makes me very proud to be a Scotsman. The distilleries were fantastic and we also enjoyed some amazing drams at the Whiskey Vaults in Oban and the Pot Still in Glasgow.
Oh, there you go. Very nice.
And now here comes a top drawer paragraph. Chris writes, funny story. During our tour and tasting at Tobermory, we were paired with several gentlemen from another whiskey club in the US. I was talking to one of the gentlemen from Seattle and he asked if we knew of SCN. I said, of course. We performed the secret nation member handshake and I asked if he was caught up on the latest One Nation Under Whiskey podcasts. When he indicated that he was, I whispered, I'm the ice cream man in his ear. It was fun to see how his face lit up. I think this name is going to stick. Yours truly, Chris the Ice Cream Man Hagen.
Fucking amazing. Absolutely amazing. Such a small world. It is such...
Brilliant. Such a small whiskey world, right? Just remarkable.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
When I first read that paragraph, it made me think of the story where you and I were at Kilholman with Jess.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Ardbeg.
Let me finish, because
okay.
I know which Ardbeg story you're going to tell, which involves a member from Seattle. But mine is when we were at Kilholman, you, me, Jess, Swede, Scott, and Andreas.
Oh, right before the Fage. Right before Fagile, right? Yeah, okay. Yep. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you and I were standing talking, and whoever we were talking to, and Anthony Wills was around, and Dave Broom was around, and so on and so forth. And a couple had gone past us, and the guy had turned back to look, and I had laughed. And he stopped in his tracks and came over and said, I thought it was Jason and Joshua, but as soon as I heard you laugh, I knew it was Jason and Joshua. I just want to say hello, love One Nation Under Whiskey, so on and so forth. And in reading this paragraph from Chris, I was like, is Chris's story better than that story? And I thought, it is. It is better than that story.
Yeah.
And so I confidently say, this might be the best paragraph ever read on One Nation Under Whiskey.
Absolutely fantastic.
Imagine getting to say, I'm the ice cream man. That's so brilliant. So brilliant.
I just want to know if he sang it. Did he say it or did he sing it?
He just whispered it. Maybe there was a little, a lilt, a rhythmic... a rhythmic lilt. Rhythm.
Listen, we have a bunch of things to get to. I mean, first and foremost, we've got Bill Thomas back on the podcast here, and you conducted another interview with him, and I've told you this before, and I'll remind the listeners. I feel as if the best interview you've ever conducted was your first interview with Bill Thomas. Now, I've not heard today's interview, so I'm going to be listening to it for the first time, just like all of our listeners. But you set the bar high, Jason, so we'll see where it goes this time around.
Well, let me tell you this. When we finished the recording, Bill said to me, do you think any of that's of use?
What? Wow.
And I said to him, yeah, I think it's definitely of use. And he said, but it was just you and me sitting here having a chat. and I was like, yeah, that's all we ever do with any of these. And you've been on one before. He said, yeah, but this time it just felt like I was just saying stuff. No.
Yeah.
For the benefit of our listeners who have not yet heard a word of this interview, there is a point in this interview where I say to Bill, you understand these mics are on, right? And he said, yeah, I'm not sharing any of the business stuff. I'm just telling you personal stuff. And I was like, okay, so long as you're comfortable sharing this personal stuff with listeners around the world, cool. But it kind of shows where our chat was at that day and where his head was at that day. I said this before, and I said this on the original interview with Bill as well. Bill is one of the busiest guys I know in the entire whiskey industry. He's always moving, he's always shaking, he's always traveling somewhere, he's always working on the next deal, the next arrangement, the next person he needs to get back to. When I get 5 minutes with Bill, I feel like those are the most precious 5 minutes around, but I'm always on tenterhooks talking to him because I'm thinking how busy he is.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that he needs to get away to do the next thing. And with each passing minute, I'm thinking, this is getting closer to the end of my time talking to Bill, right?
Yeah.
And then 5 minutes sometimes becomes 10, becomes 20. I've literally had a phone call with Bill where he and I talked on the phone for an hour, and I've thought to myself, he could have done literally 1,000 other things during these 60 minutes.
Yeah.
And he just spent them talking to me. Gosh, I feel quite lucky right now. And I never take any of that lightly.
Yeah.
On the day that I conducted this interview with him, I spent 4 hours with him at Jack Rose.
4 hours? Oh, that part I didn't know. Oh, okay. Wow.
And only 1 hour.
Jack Rose lost so much money that day. They nearly shut their door because you spent 4 hours with Bill.
Good news. It happened on a Monday and they're not open on a Monday.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
But
smart thinking. There you go.
But listeners will hear, and it does become more pronounced towards the end of the interview.
Okay.
They unexpectedly, and I say they, Bill Thomas didn't know it was happening. It was in a book. It was in a calendar. It was scheduled. They had a hood cleaning happening in the kitchen. And we were recording in the bar at the farthest spot from the kitchen door. Yeah. And for the most part, it was just kind of in the background. And I said to Bill, look, we've recorded in active distilleries, right? Yeah. Our listeners know what it means to have some industry-specific background noise. Mm-hmm. It was only as we got really close to the end of the interview and actually hitting the stop button that it really got pronounced. So I don't quite know how pronounced it's going to be, or if we're going to lose any part of the interview when you finally listen to it.
Wow. Will all the dialogue will just be...
Exactly. Exactly. But like I say, nothing was off the table here. We drank, we tasted. I will come back and I will circle back to one of the things we taste once you and I come out of this interview. I'd like to spend some time with you and that. And share a little secret.
Oh, I love secrets. I've got a secret. All right. So let's hand it off to you and Bill.
All right, so I'm sitting at Jack Rose with Bill Thomas once again. Hello, Bill Thomas.
Hello.
You have been busy pouring Jefferson's Ocean.
Cask strength.
Cask strength. Jack Rose cask.
Jack Rose single cask, yeah.
And a Westland Jack Rose single cask in Mezcal.
Yes. But before that, we were drinking a Harvey Fry, a Linkwood from 1983 that Harvey so generously gave us for this podcast.
Bless him.
Bless him.
He is with us in spirit.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, a cheeky little 19-year-old May 03 bottling of Linkwood. That's... well, cheers to Harvey. Cheers to
Harvey.
you.
Cheers.
Bill, the last time we were here, I had a lot of questions for you. And we said at the time that we were definitely coming back with a second episode. And so as we sit here in the month of March, you have now been, like a lot of us, coming out of this pandemic longer now. And I'm curious, when we talked before, you were talking about keeping the lights on, the doors open, taking care of the staff. It was all really wonderful stuff. What's it looking like now? How is DC? How is Jack Rose? How is Bill Thomas?
DC is still hurting because it's the federal government hasn't come back to work.
Oh,
we were. The news report this was months ago when they came out with when people were getting back to work. DC was the least getting back to work city in America.
Oh, wow.
Had the most liberal policy when it came to not returning back to the office.
Okay.
So most people are still only required 1 day a week. My fiance is with the Department of Defense.
Oh,
She's
wow.
an epidemiologist for the Department of Defense. And she's still only back to work 1 day every pay cycle or something, so every 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Which is when you've lost that many people in the city. And the mayor has been very outspoken. And I think about, the federal government, either get your people back to work or give up some of the buildings so we can get some tax revenue. I mean, we're DC, I think she's doing her best to try to figure out a path forward through COVID, through the aftermath of COVID, because that's really where we are business-wise is COVID in terms of being scary is over, but the long-lasting effects on the business community, especially hospitality, is still rearing its ugly head in a way that we're realizing is probably permanent.
Oh,
So,
wow.
Where we are going to, and I don't blame people. I don't blame my fiance for wanting to work from home.
Sure.
It's an amazing opportunity to, and I think that, to be honest with you, a lot of people are more productive working from home than they are. I mean, obviously, commutes and all that. I think that it's probably really good for us to have this kind of policy, but it's going to take 3 or 4 years for a city like DC and many other major cities to adjust to the lack of commercial traffic being here.
Sure.
The lack of, business people coming out with their coworkers for happy hour or getting together for lunches or talking about new places they've been. That sense of community within the workforce, I think, is eroded and is probably permanently eroded.
Wow. So you think even the cities writ large are changing the way they operate by necessity?
Yes. I mean, I think there might be a few exceptions, but I think for the most part, we're going to have to readjust. Obviously, traffic counts, walk by, all of that's going to change. The one thing I do think, or I do hope happens is, and there's already been an announcement within this city that some office buildings will be converting to residential, which is great. I mean, the more people that live here, the better. Jack Rose, I've never opened up any one of my businesses in a solely commercial district. I've always tried to be in a neighborhood because I think the neighborhood is what gives you soul. That's your regulars. And then be as close to as many hotels and some office buildings as you can. That's kind of always been our business model. And thank God, because I think it's been a saving grace for Jack. Obviously, the regular community, as well as specifically the whiskey community, the outpouring of support was enough to keep everyone employed and keep the lights on. But now we're looking at, a lot more tourism as being a prop up. We're going to have more people visiting the city on that than office workers during the day.
Sure.
And we're going to have to be really focused on, things that, and I already do this now, is like, you can only go to the whiskey community so many times for so many tastings. I mean, they're like me, they're insatiable, but their pocketbooks have limitations.
Absolutely.
So we're looking at an instance where, I can put together 7 days a week tastings. I have so much product that's amazing. So many great whiskeys. I mean, we could do every distillery probably in Scotland right now, multiple times with single cask strength bottlings. We have so much, obviously, between my potential collection and Harvey's collection. There's so many tastings, but there's not enough days in the week, and there's not enough money to go around, and that's the biggest problem right now. We're focused on tastings, we're focused on whiskey. Whiskey's up 35%, but you can only ask people to come so many times. So I find myself trying to do more expensive tastings that have like either a single barrel that comes with the tasting, or older expressions that are more costly, and then I'll have a more inexpensive tasting. I think this weekend's coming up is a Penderyn. On the 11th, we have a Penderyn tasting, which is going to be $65.
Okay.
Right, so that's on the lower side of things, plus tax and that kind of thing. It keeps it inexpensive. If you want to buy a bottle of our single barrel Penderyn, you can afterwards. But I didn't couple that one because it would be a $200 ticket, and that's just with a bottle.
Are people? So you didn't do that. Have you done that in other instances, and people have been happy to pay the larger price and get more things?
Absolutely. We well, always to get a bottle to go, right? So, and of course, right, you're going to have your mainstream or your bigger, if I did a Macallan single barrel, which is never going to happen, but if I did one and you include that in the ticket, it wouldn't matter. People would come because it's Macallan, and the devotees of Macallan are going to show up.
Yeah.
When you're promoting something like Penderyn, where, it's been around now, I don't know, 13 years, I guess, I'm guessing, something like that. And it's still an unknown quantity to a lot of people, even though I think that, it's something that this is our second single barrel of. We're very excited about it. We're high on Pandemic. It was actually high on Pandemic.
I thought you just said high on Pandemic.
This is only my second dram of the day. Penderyn. In fact, it was one of the last tastings that we had before the pandemic. We did someone was in from the distillery. I can't remember who, and we did it in the basement here at Jack. And Harvey was there, and Harvey complimented them out loud in front of everyone on their diluted.
Oh, wow.
And everybody was like, not a Harvey move at all. So for Penderyn to get that seal of approval,
wow,
one of the last from Harvey on diluted, and then obviously we had some cask strength expressions as well, which he really liked. It's good to have Penderyn back, but I feel like that's something that I want people to try if they want to pick up a bottle. Let's see what they do. Now, obviously, our last barrel sold out. So we're, we didn't have any reservations about doing it, although the cost of everything is up. Everybody,
You'd have to tell us.
Yeah.
We're living that every day.
It's going to be a little more expensive than the last expression.
Yeah. How are you finding consumers responding to that? And I want to come back and talk to this Westland in just 1 second, because I took a sip and wow, amazing. I want to come back to that. But how are you finding consumers responding to everything being more expensive?
It's definitely tough, but we try to figure out other ways to give value. So, I mean, the daily drinker, we're just, they don't have to say anything. We know what we need to do, and we know as whiskey drinkers where we need to make price adjustments, either make some things artificially lower than they should be if you go by a percentage formula, or making sure that there are things on the menu. And this has always been our philosophy, that if you come in and you ask for the best $8 dram, we'll find you something really good for $8. I mean, you tell me what you want to spend. If you have obviously a particular distillery in mind and something like that, but our job here, and that's why we pay whiskey advisors 6 nights of the week to be here, is so they can help shape your experience to what you want flavor-wise or profile-wise, as well as price-wise.
Yep.
So if you came in and wanted to spend $32 on 4 drams, we can make that happen for you.
Nice.
And that's really the key. And I look at it all the time because, it's been rough on me financially during COVID. And, I like to drink these drams. So I approach it from, and I approach every tasting that we put out there. Would I buy the ticket?
Yep, 100%.
If the answer is no, then I change it. I changed the Pandaren one 4 times. The text messages that went out to my staff when I was trying to figure it out, they were like, it was like, do this. And there was like, not even 10 seconds. No, change, do this. No. Call me. Oh, screw calling me. Just do this. And then before I settled on this $65, and then we were like, oh, one more thing, add a cocktail with Pandaren. Let's, so.
But I think that's certainly been a conversation you and I have had over the years, and this is what Joshua and I bring to this as well, is we are whiskey people, right? Whiskey consumers first and foremost, and we know the pricing, and we know the prices, and we know where we want to go with pricing.
Right.
And as things are getting more expensive, we're trying not to apologize. You never want to try to sell somebody something while you're apologizing.
Yeah.
But you want to be cognizant of the number,
Yep.
right? And we look at those numbers all the time, and we do the same as you. We go back and forth, up the ladder, down the ladder.
Yeah.
Can we get away with selling it for that? It's a difficult proposition. So, and you've got almost 3,000 bottles to do that for, and you've got tastings, and you've got a menu. Like, does that drive you crazy? They're trying to get it right?
You know what? I would have to say that, if I could spend, it doesn't drive me crazy because I would love to be around whiskey 24 hours a day. And more importantly, I think what COVID has taught me that I really do want to be around whiskey people 24 hours a day. And that's it. And our love of whiskey is so strong. And I don't mean to be so narrow, but if I'm hanging around and we're talking politics, doing anything that revolves around sitting in any way, a whiskey's in hand, and I'd rather be with whiskey people because I just want that interaction, that little bit of enjoyment that I get so much more from a glass when I'm sitting with someone. I don't know. Whiskey it's not even a chore. It's just how quickly can I get things out that people need. I feel like a need. I don't feel like it's a want. It's a need. It's crazy.
So talking about a need, I need a bottle of this Westland.
Yes.
How did this come about?
They had a select amount of casks that were in alternative, like wine casks or mezcal, obviously. And they had one mezcal cask. And I can't remember. This is crazy. I'm trying to think of who was just like, we got one sample of mezcal. And I was just like, well, that sounds interesting. They're like, we have one sample. I was like, okay, bring by all the samples and we'll try the mezcal. And I tried it and I was like, lock it up now, call. Because they knew whoever tried it first was going to take it.
Wow.
There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
This wasn't, I would love to tell you that I agonized and chose the best mezcal cask that Westland offered me. But this was, they had one cask and it's stunning. I just really love how it works.
Is it the Washington Pale Malt?
Yeah.
That then went into
mezcal. Yeah. And I just think that fruit or like kind of notes with the mezcal works so well.
Yeah, it's interesting. Jess and I just had this conversation the other day. Jess Lomas, who is a Glasgow-based Westland nut, right? Fully fledged Westland nut. Her and Chris Hallstrom, Swedescott. And we were talking about the pale malt. And when we want to present Westland to people, we want to present the 5 malt. We want to show that chocolate malt. We want to show the heaviness and the robustness of it. This mezcal cask Washington Pale Malt is one of the best Washington Pale Malt Westlands I've had.
Yeah, and I believe
it shines. It absolutely shines in this cask.
Yeah.
Brings in a pleasant smoke, a wonderful pepperiness on the palate.
I just think it was when we think about complete whiskeys, like from nose to palate, balance, finish, everything about this whiskey I think worked. It was and to be honest with you, at a place like Jack, where there's 3,000 bottles to choose from, doing single cask, and I think this is where distilleries working with us, it works out well because we're going to push this Westland, and this will push the whole line of Westland.
Yep.
It puts Westland back in, when people are looking through the book, and it'll make people have one of these and then probably go to a different Westland and continue their journey or go out and buy Westlands out of. So I think where Jack Rose is helpful is, I think Westland and Penderyn are two examples of where we can be helpful, and we appreciate the access. Yep. If someone showed up, it's not Westland could have sold this cast to anyone, 1,000 accounts in the country, but they put it in our hands, and I think that will work out well for Westland. From the amount of people that will come in here and try and then move on to other expressions.
Well, and actually, that's partly my next question, which is, did you have people previously coming in asking for Westland?
We did, but it goes up and down. So for instance, like if something new comes out from Westland, or people are reading a magazine and they catch an article, or Westland gets press, then you can tell when something hit the news in some way, right? Maybe somebody won gold at San Francisco. Maybe somebody was featured in the Whiskey Advocate. Maybe somebody wrote, in Whiskey Magazine, they wrote an expose on American single malts, right? Westland's going to be top of the list, and that will drive traffic. But when you have, it's not like the old days where there was, in 2000 when there was 10 American distillery, 10 Kentucky distilleries plus Old Pachuro and a few others, right? I mean, you have 600 choices.
Oh, gosh.
1,000? I don't even know, right?
3,000?
Yeah.
3,000 American distilleries, doing different products, not all American single malt.
Yeah.
But 2,500, 3,000 American distilleries.
How do you sift through?
Right.
I mean, Scotland could stop producing tomorrow, and with all the expressions that they put out over the last 200 years, you couldn't work your way through the stuff that's out there. Let alone, even though it's less distilleries than the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, 140 or so.
But the different expressions and amazing single casks and that history of cask exploration with, wine casks and everything else, Scotland just has has so many expressions on lock that are so good in so many different ways. I could never drink another Great Lafroig that was produced in the last 10 years and just work my body back on Lafroig. So
could you imagine doing that? It just sounds...
It's crazy. Yeah, I mean...
Such a wild focus it would be.
Yeah.
So talking about American single malt then, do you have... What's your take on the consumer when it comes to American single malt? We talked just before we hit record about, categorization now coming.
Right.
Again, it'll be back in the news. You'll get that little pass-through.
Right.
Do you hear your consumers, your patrons, talking about American single malt as a category? Is it still a learning curve? Is it still pushing water uphill?
I think it's still pushing water uphill.
Okay.
I think, locally you have Virginia Distilling, which has been, I think, pouring on a lot of new expressions, but also getting out there, helping broadening the understanding of American single malt. Westland obviously has led the way for a long time, but the problem is there's not a density of top-notch American single malts to collectively push the ball forward fast enough to have the consumer thinking about it daily or every time they step in the bar. It still gets a little bit forgotten. And until I'm going to name drop. I was talking to Bill Lumsden, and we discussed this very thing when I was in Scotland with him, and I was just like, you could use a man like Bill in the U.S. creating an American single malt distillery with his kind of notoriety, with his name behind it, for people to go, oh shit, a major Scottish distiller creating an American single malt with all of that knowledge coming over and just having that kind of additional weightiness of his name, something like that to add in. Or, if it was someone, I can name, 50 distillers from Scotland that could come in, and just their connection, just knowing that there was that seal of approval, that quality stamp, it would help the category tremendously.
Which is then interesting that they went down, LVMH went down the Woodinville path.
Right.
And so they picked up a bourbon and rye distillery.
Yeah.
And putting, their weight behind that. It'll be, I'm trying to think, obviously, I think this is a mistake I make. I think of Balcones as an American single malt distillery. And I know so many people who think of them as a bourbon distillery.
Right.
And so when we talk Westland and Copperworks and Westward, and we're up in the Pacific Northwest, obviously Virginia here for us locally. But then Balcones in Texas, I felt helped to broaden the category as well. But I might be in a minority of thinking that.
I mean, the problem with the Balcones is they get lost as a Texas malt.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're an American single malt, but they're Texas.
Yeah.
And Texas, I think, is the stronger pull on Balcones than American single malt.
Yeah. For sure.
And, they have a ton of different expressions, which, is great, but it also doesn't help the category focus on just a pure a single malt category. And I always thought this was, an issue with Corsair. Not having a strong bourbon or just something known as, you had Rye-Mageddon, but having these staples, these bases that people say, oh, classic American distillery, but look at their creativity. It was more, here's all of my creativity.
Yeah.
And it's been difficult to navigate, say, the market if you don't have something that people are regularly reaching for on their back bar.
Yeah.
Like a great bourbon, a great rye, a great single malt. When you start saying, oh, that's a Texas single malt, or that's it just, we still haven't come to, the average American consumer hasn't come to grips with all of the nuances of what American whiskey can be. Mm-hmm. And that's
for sure.
That's an issue.
Oh gosh, we got 10 years to go on that. That's going to be a big project. I am curious, as we're sitting here talking Westland, and we were just at Westland a month ago, we've got an interview with Matt Hoffman coming up where we talk about Solum. For you, dealing with customers, one of the conversation pieces with Westland was they were taking away the 3 entry points.
Right.
The peated, the sherried.
Yeah, the sherrywood, which we have over on the shelf.
Right, I saw that last night when I was in. And they went to the single flagship.
Yeah.
And that was the entry point, and then there were going to be 3 specials on top of that. And obviously you've still got the sherried on the shelf, so maybe...
We bought everything they had left.
Right.
So we could have it,
Right.
you know.
Very smart.
Yeah.
So you potentially haven't reached the point yet where flagship is the one you're putting out in front of people.
Right.
You're still putting the 3 in front of people, or the
Well, to be honest with you, we're putting the Westland Aged Mezcal in front of everyone. And then they have to find the other ones on their own. I can only give you so many breadcrumbs. That's it. So, right now still, single barrels are bread and butter now, for sure. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about it. We're doing one every 8 to 10 days.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
That's what we're averaging, and it's become so obsessive for us now that, the single barrels are everything. I mean, they're really we have all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, when you have a new single barrel every time someone visits, if they come once a week, we almost have a new bottle for them every week. Oh,
if you're doing it every 8 to 10 days, that's wild.
Yeah.
And that's sold to foot traffic for you.
Yeah.
Like, that's the wild part. Again, a little part we're talking about before hitting record, that's not online sales for you. That's not shipping to other parts of the country for you. That's walkthroughs. That's an incredible number of people buying an incredible number of bottles.
Yeah.
8 to 10 days.
Yeah. It's and obviously we want to keep as much of it as possible.
Okay.
So the consumers can try it for the next 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Wow. If we ever can get back beyond this and business gets back to normal, then we would stockpile, I'd say 60% of every barrel, 70%, if I could.
You're honestly making me feel sick, Bill.
Yeah.
Because we get nervous when we sit on 3 and 4 6-packs of product. Like we want it out the door. We want to get the shipping done and get it off to Nation members. We never want to be sitting on 60%.
Yeah, that's what would be my dream.
My dream.
Yeah.
Your dream is another man's nightmare.
My dream is 50 years from now, somebody's drinking this Wesleyan Mezcal. Sure.
And I do think that there are definitely, we had this conversation last night with the group we were drinking with, where I poured the very, very remains of our original Single Cask Nation Kilchoman 4-year-old. And we're simply not sitting on any bottles of that.
Right.
And we haven't sat on any bottles of that since it sold out 22 months after we put it up for sale. And finally it sold.
Right.
We do miss that 10, 12 years since that release.
Yes.
Not having bottles of that to open up.
Right.
And there's a very good chance you have more bottles of that than I have.
I can say that I touched it last night. I did, actually. And it made me think, because I was, when you started Single Cask Nation, I set aside a single bottle or 2 bottles of your first releases. And I'm trying there was
the Aaron 12 that came with the Pinot Noir.
It was Glenmoray, right, or something. There was
Glenmoray was in our second release.
Yep. Okay, so we have that.
The first was the Aaron the Kilchoman and the Peated Ben Riach, 17 years old.
Yep, which we have.
And then the second round of 3 was the Glenelgin 18.
Yep.
The Dalmore 12.
Yes,
and
I touched that last night too.
Lafroig 6.
Touched that last night as well. So I came across, when I was searching for everything, and I told you this when we did, like, to have a party.
Yep.
But I did it, and Harvey did it too. Mm-hmm. So that means we're sitting on at least 2 bottles of every. And I looked, and there must have been. I know that there was at least 20 bottles of the stuff that, because I found it was funny because it was mixed in with all my most rare Stitzel Weller. Your original six pack of your stuff was in. I opened it. I was looking for a particular old Lawrenceburg bottle, and there it was. I opened a thing and I pulled it out, and I was like, "Man, these capsules look so good. What could this be?" And it was a Single Cask Nation. So that's what I think of it. I keep it with my Stitzel.
Gosh, that's the rarefied air for us. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, but whenever you want to do a party and a tasting,
brilliant.
Team up.
Let's do it.
We'll supply you supply the commentary. We'll supply the booze. So.
And I'll be drinking it very happily.
Yeah. We were all big fans. I remember, you don't remember, but I met you guys in New York when you first launched at Whiskey Fest.
Okay, 2012 Hurricane Sandy weekend. Yeah,
and you came, because it's funny because I touched the Talisker cash drink that came out that year.
Yes, Roberto.
We
were talking about that with Roberto last night. All those damaged bottles that sold for cheapest chips, double digits.
Oh my God, that was so good. In fact, I found an envelope that had the labels in it. That Warehouse gave us the labels because the bottles they had steamed. The humidity the glue had become and fallen off.
So the story being that when Hurricane Sandy hit, this store had storage in their basement. Their basement got flooded, and these 20-year-old Taliskers in 2012 were getting sold for just clearance prices. Yeah. I think Joshua has a bottle.
With the labels in an envelope. They were in great shape. It's just like they fell off.
Wow.
So I found that, because I obviously drink some of them with no label, right? Because why put the label back on if you're just going to crack it? And so I have extra labels if anybody needs Talisker labels.
So I just brought the Jefferson Ocean Single Cask Strength to my lips.
Yes.
Talk to us about this. What's going on with this?
So it's funny because, I've had people go, this whole like Asian at sea thing and whatever. But I'm just like, listen, we're not. That's what's creating the agitation. That's all we're talking about here. We're just looking to make something a little different. And before I talk about this one, I was saying to someone that, like, there are insane devotees to ocean.
Okay.
And there's also people that think it's gimmicky, right? But it's really, there's a couple of people who thought it was gimmicky. I tried them on it, and they were like, okay, we'll take a bottle.
Okay.
So we haven't launched this yet, but I've actually sold a few bottles because people really wanted it. I was in Kentucky. This is before COVID, and or was it? No, was it? I'm trying to think. COVID times, but a guy was sitting in. It was a liquor store that had a bar, right? Where you could sample stuff. And a guy was talking about Ocean. I was walking by where he did it, and I was just like, he's like, I've been trying to find all these Oceans, and I go, I heard him. I was like, hey, my name is Bill Thomas from Jacko's Dining Saloon. I think I have batch. Back when they had it, it was in Boston with number 3, but it was kind of like this different kind of label.
Oh, okay.
More fancy.
Okay.
Spent some money on the labeling. Okay. And I said, I think I have batch 3 in storage somewhere. And I was like, you can have it. Right? You can have it if you want it. Just because he was so big into it. I heard him like passionately talking about it. I was like, I'm not going to miss one bottle of Jefferson Ocean from my collection. And I said, I will send it to you.
Yeah.
And he's like, we swapped numbers, and I said, but I will tell you this: all of my stuff is in unmarked boxes, and it will probably take me a year or 2 to find it. And
what a promise!
He was great, and it did. I found it almost 2 years.
Are you kidding me?
But then I was like, what was this guy's name?
Oh no!
But I scrolled through all my. One day I just went through text, and I was like, I'll find it. And I found him, and I shipped it to him. So batch 3 of
that's an insane
Ocean.
story.
Yeah.
I said this when we had you on the podcast the first time. You're easily one of the busiest people I know. And any time I get to speak to you, like you're heading off somewhere else. You're the fact that you would spend the time to scroll through your phone of a day to find somebody's name from 2 years prior absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah. And
the guy got his bottle.
Yeah, the guy got his bottle. This one, caramel. There's like a peanut shell thing going on here, I think.
I do like a good peanut shell. I like a good monkey nut.
And I just think this was just an excellent example of bourbon. In fact, a little bit of a saltiness thing going on as well. And I just find this to be so compelling. I just keep drinking it. It's a drinker. This is just a drinker. And it's not showing whatever the proof is, this baby. 121.4. No way this is 121.4.
Okay, 60 and a half.
Bounce. Yeah.
Wow.
So I just, the other day we were sitting at the bar and I was like, holy shit, I'm on my like 5th Jefferson. So, and Trey, obviously, I've known Trey for a lot of years too. So the fact that Jefferson Ocean is still evolving, and I still think, I think barrel picks. I bought an Eagle Rare this morning before I saw you.
Oh, okay.
I got to a liquor store this morning and bought an Eagle Rare single barrel pick before they opened. They actually let me in 15 minutes early. And I was getting something else from them because I had gotten a store alert that they were dropping Old Forester cash drink today. But by coincidence, I was also buying whiskey from a guy in the parking lot across the street. I had a 9:30 appointment. So that's why I thought this was so...
Now that's the most Bill Thomas sentence I've heard.
Yes.
I was buying liquor from a guy in a parking lot across the street.
Yes.
Yeah,
I thought it was... I thought I was crazy. On my way there, I get a store alert. And I was just like, this is crazy. I'm going to pick up... I picked up an Old Society bottling, 3 bottles of that. I picked up... some old Elmer T. Lee, some old High West, some old Four Roses, that kind of stuff, and some old Ardbegs. And then here it is, I get this alert when I'm 5 minutes away from my meeting across the street from the liquor store that they're dropping Old Forester cash drink today. I'm like, well, I just got to now. But now but I have to come meet you, so I need to fit all this in. So can you let me in early? Let me buy. They're like, we don't even have it on display because it's going to all be online sales.
Oh, wow.
And so they had to go to storage, grab the 2 bottles. But then I saw the Eagle Rare sitting there, single barrel, and I was like, Christ, how much? I don't have a credit card on me. I got $300 and some bucks in my pocket. I had more tan that to start, but once I left the parking lot, I had less. So I had $300 left.
You know these mics are on, right?
Yeah.
You know these are on.
This is all for personal. This is all my personal stuff.
I love it, Bill.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So in listening to you, I think this is true for any collector, and I know you're not a collector in the truest sense, right? You are a drinker, right? And you've said, like, I'm buying in bulk now because I want to be drinking this for 50 years, right? So you're collecting in a slightly different way. But I think for any collector, there's this moment when you ask yourself the question, am I a collector or am I an addict? Right? Do you have moments when you're chasing, like, that type of story you're just telling? I've heard you tell in other instances for other bottles. Do you ever have that kind of moment of reckoning and you said it in this interview earlier, like the need, right? Yeah. There's the need to open that bottle and share that bottle.
Absolutely.
Do you feel driven by that?
I definitely am an addict in the sense that I want to have access. In fact, if for some reason, say someone came in and offered me an insane amount of money for Jack Rose, right, or something, which I can tell you if you do it on the COVID numbers, nobody's offering me much. Pennies. If we talk about actual profit, if you want to own it because you want your own playground, that's one thing. But if you want it for money, that's different. But to not have the ability to drink whatever mood you're in. Yeah. And we've talked about this before, drinking your mood. Yeah. Sometimes bourbon, sometimes Westland Mezcal, sometimes, a cash strength Lafroig or a Jefferson's Ocean. Yeah. Like, not to have that ability would drive me insane. I just don't know what I would do without that. And it really is an addiction in that sense. I don't have, like, and I've said this before, as much as I've tried to be an alcoholic, I don't have that gene.
As much as you've tried.
I've tried. I'm trying to, I feel like I've let the team down, but...
Is it in your family? Is that the
there
has
been some in my family, yeah, of course. And I mean, obviously, since my family's been in the bar business since, the late 1800s, if there wasn't at least one, we'd be in trouble, right? Then what did we do wrong? But yeah. So there's been some issues like that, but it didn't. I love drinking, but I love drinking when I'm talking to you.
Yes.
Right at home.
Yeah.
I'm not reaching. Like the other night, my fiance, who's also a whiskey drinker, I was like, hey, do you want to do some dramming? Just to talk, because I really want to have that discussion and that camaraderie when drinking, as opposed to just silently going, wow, wasn't that a great dram? In my mind. Yeah. Sometimes you're having a good day or a bad day and you want to dram, no doubt about it. Yep. Or you're just in the mood. But if I'm going to sit down and have 5 or 6, like the other night we sat down in Springbank, Glendrona, Lafroig, we had 6 different distilleries, and there was this, the back and forth with her that makes whiskey all the more enjoyable when you're sharing it with someone.
So you definitely have the passion, right? Yeah. Like there's no doubt about that. I was just curious when you're, on a Monday morning buying, a collection out of a parking lot.
Yes.
It has overtones of other activities that people get up to.
Yes, that's true. And it's funny because I didn't even have enough money. I gave him an IOU, right? I just said, he goes, the gentleman needed some money, and I was just like, listen, I didn't have time to research and say how much I could pay. I was like, what do you need to get through your moment of crisis? And then we'll figure out the rest. Yeah. I was like, just bring everything you have and meet me.
Oh my gosh.
And that's what we did. So, I also had a guy, call me who I bought a bunch of whiskey from not too long ago, pre-COVID, and there was $1,000 IOU. You can spend here at the bar.
Oh wow!
And he just got, after 2.5 years, he's been hunkered down.
Okay.
He's like, is that so good? I know it's like, I was like, if I told you have it, you have it. And I just wrote it it was just written on a business card. $1,000 spend when you need it, kind of thing, which comes out of my pocket, but because I can't remember, I buy everything personally, so
yes,
but it's crazy. So, and I'm always doing stuff like this. It's the only way to keep up with whiskey.
So, we haven't really talked about this in the podcast. Josh and I haven't really brought this up too much, but I have found, and this is a bigger question that I did want to ask you today, which is, I have been finding myself returning to 2009 and either pulling things out of my own collection from then, or looking at those things around auctions, or buying those back through friends.
Why 2009?
I was blogging at that point.
Okay.
So I was tasting everything that was coming out.
Right.
It was either being sent to me, or I would find it from somewhere. But as 2009 has become 2023, if I look back on when some of my favorite bottles were coming out, they were absolutely, if not exactly 2009, 6 months before in 2008, 6 months later in 2010. Just off the top of my head, I can think of Aaron Peacock. I can think of the Aaron anniversary that came in the orange box with the silver wings on it, which was beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
I had it in my hand last night.
Right, absolutely beautiful.
But that was a couple of Harvey, though. He had one that he had kept.
It's just an absolute cracker. Hjarta, Ardbeg roller coaster. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Like that was all happening. And then you've got inaugural Kilchoman coming out that fall, right? That September of 2009. Like it's just a period that's really happening. And that's what I'm finding myself returning to.
Right.
At the same time, my journey started the end of the 90s. You very kindly said you just listened to the Keepers episode yesterday on your drive. And so I talked about my journey in there, which was fall of 1996 I started. So it's not like my journey started in 2009, but it was clearly a moment, and I was experiencing things, and some things were just absolutely phenomenal. So I don't want to be the 48-year-old drinker in 2023 saying everything was better back in my day. But that was just a great period. Do you either have periods that you yourself return to, or as you sit here in 2023, what are you seeing from whiskey? We had this conversation last night about consistency. Things are consistent, but you're not necessarily hitting the highest highs, but you are avoiding the lowest lows.
Yeah, absolutely.
So is consistency a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
Yeah, well, I will say this. Like, when you think back to periods where things were, like, say you're blogging, so you had accessibility to a lot of whiskeys and a lot of amazing whiskeys. And I think for anybody who's in the bourbon world, pre-2011... By 2012, I think it was game over, and things had taken off. So essentially, what you had was the ability to crack. If you were into bourbon prior to 2012, for sure, you had the ability to. There was no bottle that you almost wouldn't crack. The idea of a bottle you wouldn't crack really wasn't in the bourbon thought process.
Sure,
you were. I can't think of anything that I was like. Right? I mean, a high end would have been a couple $1,000 bottle.
Okay.
Kind of really. I mean, there wasn't a lot out there that was that you weren't willing to crack on a regular. So from that perspective, there's a lot of romance around that era simply because you tried everything you've ever wanted to try. So you're nostalgic. I'd say for a bourbon drinker, before 2012 is a different world. I mean, it might as well be dinosaur time.
Gotcha.
For me, I don't have that on the Scotch side simply because when I got into Scotch, first trying things with like Doug Phillips in Kentucky, which of all places to start your Scotch journey, and then meeting Harvey and having access to any bottle you've ever wanted anyways, there was never for me a period where I didn't have access to the greatest 40-year-old or the newest release. And so whereas bourbon, I can think of years, specifically even 2002 and 3, that I think were pivotal years for me in the bourbon world, but not in the Scotch world. That's always just been accessible, which makes no sense. And also Scotch took that downturn. If you look at the old bottoms auctions, back before they got out of the game, and now they're back into the game in the U.S., and I was buying Black Bowmore for $3,000 a bottle.
Wow.
At auctions in the mid-2000s.
Wow.
And I remember, and I was I think I got one for like $2,900. I didn't buy the one that was $3,500. It's just kind of crazy, right? That those things were just. I remember at a bottoms auction, the only other guy that was buying everything up was one of the, I think, waiters from Brandy Library.
Oh, okay.
And I felt like such a jerk. It felt like such a jerk because I was like, these are gifts. These are gifts. And I was just like buying everything.
These are gifts.
These are gifts. At the prices that Scotch was going for in that period is stupid. Like, it never should have gotten that low.
That's absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. So what about the second part of that question then? What do you think about whiskey as you sit here and you have traveled back through decades, courtesy of Harvey and through your own buying? What do you think about whiskey?
I mean, I always say this, there's never been a better time to be a drinker than now. There's more great whiskey coming out all the time. I mean, you may find a slight distillery profile change.
For sure.
You know,
absolutely.
And some of the ones, and some of your favorites right now might not be some of your favorites, but then they'll come out with that one bottle that you're like, oh, this re-energizes me into that distillery, or it gives me faith in that distillery. You know, I can't think of anyone that and there's distilleries that I thought weren't so good that are now doing some really good stuff. There's stuff that was blend intended that single barrels have escaped, and we're getting a lot more access to some of those. So you know, as far as Scotch is concerned, I think that's nothing but up for Scotch. I do not understand some of the values in the Scotch world are amazing. Scotch doesn't cease to kind of amaze me with some of the pricing that they come out with, but it also, some of the distilleries also amaze me at the craziness that they price stuff at. Here's the thing. It was Scotch. If you're an up-and-comer, there's so much value. If you're established, and if you're the top tier established, there's so little value, if any value, and that's a problem. So you'll find yourself grabbing some of the things that people like hang their hat on. You and I probably don't drink because it just doesn't make any sense price wise to do so. And to me, that's a problem because some people are giving all of those labels the highest marks or the highest demand when you and I are just like, what are you doing?
It's a mistake.
I would drink that for a fourth of the price, but I'm not reaching for it right now. And we've gotten pushback from some of the distilleries. They're like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And I'm like, well, I'll tell you. I won't say in public, like I'm not trying to badmouth you.
Yeah.
But I said this on the phone this morning in my hour commute. It's what I don't say that you should be picking up on. You know, it's what you don't see. You know, because I'm not going to try and really bury someone. But if I'm not pushing someone, or if you ask me a question and I move on, there's a reason. You know, and I don't know, because we want to put value. I mean, at the end of the day, if I could make a living charging $9 an ounce, I would. You know?
Right. Absolutely heard. Do you agree with that statement that the highest highs have gone along with the lowest lows? Or do you still have moments when a whiskey turns your head?
Yes, I definitely have. But once again, I have to look at, if we're talking simply something that is a recent release from a distillery,
absolutely.
as opposed to something that I got a bottle.
Recent release, absolutely.
I am. And I have to say this, but our Laphroaig Virgin French Oak.
Oh, wow.
I think is a stunner.
Whoa.
And I think, and I've said this, I explained this. When we went to Laphroaig to pick the single barrel, we were given the options between, I think, Port cask or Oloroso cask, 3 different levels of toasting on the Virgin French Oak, ex-bourbon cask, right? You have all of these to choose from, PX cask.
Yep.
You have all of this to choose from, and Chris and I, the way we approached it was we each went to one end of the rick and said, you start there, I'll start here, make your notes, we'll compare. And when we went through all of these different examples of casks, and we revealed which one we both liked, it was the same exact barrel.
Fantastic.
Right? And so you know that's an example of like, it doesn't matter what the age of this whiskey is, it doesn't matter the finish, it's just an amazing whiskey. And I think that that was probably something that I'm just blown away by. And then, of course, you have that honeymoon period where you're like, wow, we picked this amazing cask, and now it's going to get bottled. 3 or 4 months later, it's going to be shipped to you. You're going to actually get it in bottle, and is it the same?
Yeah,
or
yep.
was my palate, and that one just was like, this is killer.
Wow.
Absolutely killer.
Wow.
And it got really great reviews from the people that we sold it to and the tasting. And I'm going in today's the 6th. I leave in 2 weeks again. I'm heading back to look and pick another cask, and we'll approach it from the same perspective. And my thing is, what will it be this time? Will it be a PX? Will it be an Oloroso? Will it be an ex-bourbon, which would be the least sexy of the group?
But crisp.
But if it's great, it's great. I'm not gonna pigeonhole our selection based on any preconceived notion. So that was the last whiskey that I was just like, wait a minute, this thing is 7 years old.
Great.
7 years old, and I would want to bunker personally 10 bottles.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. That's the age we want to be drinking Lefroy at, like
right?
5, 6, and 7.
Yeah, well, or 6. Yeah, good. And we'll do it in the tasting. We can do a strictly single cask nation tasting, or we can do a best of side by sides. But yeah, I do find now the lows. There's a lot more lows on the bourbon world that you avoid. Okay. I think.
Okay.
But I don't know. I can't think of the last time like I was just like. But maybe it's what people bring us because we're Jack Rose. People don't show up with 43%, 43 ABV OBs, and a lot of times they don't even bring them in the door.
Yeah, that's smart.
I mean, what's the point? We're looking for that great single cask or your special release that's exceptional, but that's what people come here for. We do carry the OBs. But it took us, that's the longest category that took us to restock, was original OBs.
Okay.
And the other day I just stocked Bowmore. I realized, I was like, wait a minute, we don't have Bowmore 18, we don't have Bowmore 15, we don't have, I was like, that was a major oversight because, first of all, they're affordable, but we just didn't have them on the shelf. And it was a hole in our inventory. And we still have holes like that we keep finding that we're like,
sure.
Because we're so obsessive on single cask. But sometimes those OBs are obviously great entryways into the category and into a distillery, but they're also fairly priced.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where you find your $8 pour, your $9 pour. Maybe not on a Bowmore 18, but... No. Not to lead people down that path.
Yeah. Jack Rose has Bowmore 18 at $8. Come in today.
Do you want to get out of here talking about Premier Drams?
Yes. You
want to talk about that?
Yeah. We've changed the date. The date is going to be July 2nd is a Sunday.
Oh, word! Wow, July.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I had March open for you, I had April open for you, and now we're on to July. That's
the problem is we just got behind.
Yep.
And we've had some. Just with everyone's travel schedule, with our single barrel schedule, with everything that's going on, I couldn't put it together. I can't put it together in time.
Yeah.
So, and then I put in,
it's tough.
This is going to sound crazier, but I kept getting requests from some really big whiskey people that said, please don't do it on this week. Don't do it on this month. Do it. And I kept pushing and pushing, and I adjusted the schedule multiple times just based on a single person's attendance.
Madness lies that way, I can tell you.
I know,
from
but
personal experience.
You can't. So I finally, July 2nd, it will allow us to extend it multiple days because a lot of people will have July 4th off.
Correct.
So we'll probably do something the night before, the 2nd, the 3rd.
Oh, wow.
And the 4th you're off. And DC is also a good town for fireworks.
There you go.
So...
wow, July 2nd. Now, is this going to be like the text that goes out to the staff? Is this...
Yes.
It's July 2nd on this podcast, but it might not end up being.
No, it is. And because it counteracted the text that went out the week before saying it was going to be Father's Day. And then the staff was like, you cannot... Now they've already gotten the text saying it's no longer Father's Day. Let's do it.
So for the record, do you want to describe Premier Drams to the listeners? Because It is a hell of an event.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I started the event years ago simply because none of the more mainstream whiskey festivals were geared towards cask strength and single barrel, and I was getting kind of disenchanted by going to a whiskey festival, and it would always be Harvey, Roberto, and I going to these festivals, and of course, if there was anything hidden in the boot or under the table, we would get access to. But that was just like, half dozen drams maybe, right? And that's all we were looking for, except for if you released a new product.
Yeah.
And first of all, I didn't think that was fair. And it kind of sucked because I would be trying something, or you'd have to share with 2 or 3 of the other people that you knew because you got access and they wouldn't.
Yeah.
So we wanted to create a festival that had, or an evening that had all of that stuff that everyone would get to drink. So we created something that was cask strength oriented, single barrel oriented, and new. So if you are releasing a new product, we're happy because people haven't tried it. It gives them an opportunity. But we wanted to focus on those 3 categories, and it's been super successful. It sells out every year.
It's great to pour at. It's a great consumer who comes through.
Yeah.
It's people who know
it's
their
the whiskey
whiskeys.
people.
Yep.
And we have more whiskeys than you can possibly try here.
Yep.
If you go to your table, I could honestly, between you guys and Society and Willet and Wilderness Trail, Old Forester, they come crazy, and so did Balvenie came crazy. It'd be great to get Gemma over here. See Gemma back in the United States.
Right.
She can bring the kid. We'll create daycare.
Jack Rose daycare.
But yeah, we wanted to have a lot of great individual pours and this is what I love about it, and I still describe it from the first year, where there's so much whiskey, you can't visit every station.
Yeah.
So you'll see people commiserating or talking about no, you have to try this one
Here's
at
the
this
one.
station. Here's the one you got to try.
Yep.
And because you have limited space, so maybe we'll stretch it out a little bit, because people will have. They'll probably. We already figured at second. You're going to take you're not going to go to work on the 3rd.
Yeah,
nobody's going to work on the 3rd.
That's going to be a good Monday.
So I think it's going to be good. We are going to bring in a component of Harvey.
Oh,
because
brilliant.
we didn't have the opportunity to really celebrate Harvey.
Yep.
And if everybody remembers correctly, the very first Premier Drams was on his birthday. And I did that for Harvey. We did that big cake that was shaped like a barrel.
It was beautiful.
And we priced it according to his age, which I'm not even going to say it because nothing will ever be that cheap again. I'm trying to think if we made money the first year. So we'll have a component for Harvey. I'm planning some special stuff. I just got to run it by Roberto, make sure that's how we want to do things. There'll be a lot of pictures up.
Oh, perfect.
That kind of thing.
That's really cool. Well, I already know exactly which bottle I am bringing of ours to honor Harvey.
Oh, good deal.
It'll be under the table.
Okay.
And so anybody listening to this podcast who comes along to Premier Drams, ask me for the Harvey
that's
Dram.
Fair. That's fair, right?
Right? And I will have a Harvey Dram under the table. Let's wrap it up here. If careful listeners are hearing what sounds like intermittent white noise, you have a hood cleaning happening.
Yes.
And I've been watching them through the doorway there, and the hose, they're hosing it down right now. They've surrounded it with plastic bags, and they're hosing it down.
Safety first here.
And it's getting louder. So, Bill, this has been a brilliant whiskey chat.
Honestly,
easy peasy.
I don't feel like we got to any specific questions. I feel like we just talked.
Well, we don't have to get to specific questions, right? It is just the type of things we talk about.
We didn't even talk current events of what's going on in the whiskey world because
Nope.
so much shit is going on.
Look at you teasing the 3rd visit from Bill Thomas.
I don't get paid for these, so it's not like I'm like I can.
That makes 2 of us, brother.
Yeah. How are things going there? Everything going great?
Yeah. So actually, when we hit stop here, I'm actually going to pull out 2 drams for you to taste that we just released the very end of February.
Okay.
A 14-year-old North British finished in heavy PX.
Grain or single malt?
Yep. Grain from them.
Okay. We put some old single malts on the shelf.
Wow.
And it was At least I put one recently, and it was delicious.
You and I have got more work to be doing here, Bill.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I'm going to pour for you is a 1989 French brandy
cool.
that we finished in Active PX as well. So let's get out of here and let's get to some real work.
All right, great.
Cheers, mate.
All right, take care.
Sincere thanks to Bill for his time. Like I said, leading into that interview, I spent a lot of time with him on that Monday, and we drank a fair few beverages, and we had a jolly, jolly good time together. I have to say, and I don't think I said it in the interview, when I left Jack Rose that day, I left with 4 bottles of that Westland single cask mezcal cask.
Man. That was it mezcal or tequila?
It is mezcal, my friend.
Oh, man,
it is on the label that you have somewhere in your house.
Oh, I know exactly where it is. It's delicious.
I delivered your bottle to you when we saw each other in Philadelphia at the end of March. And I remember putting a heart on your bottle of it. It is amazing. And to be in that interview and talking to Bill where he's saying, I wish we only sold through 60%, of our single casts that we do. I wish I had more of everything to the side. I'm busy out here picking up 4 of these Westlands, and I'm here today on the podcast saying, if you're in DC or you're around DC or you've got a way to get someone to get you a bottle, absolutely do so. I will also say, for the benefit of our very own Jess and Swede Scott, who are 2 of the biggest Westland nuts in the world, I made sure that I grabbed a bottle for each of you as well. And I have told you nothing about it, so that you could hear about it on this episode with me and Bill tasting it on the episode. You, of course, Joshua, I had the privilege of seeing you in person, so there was no way we were not enjoying that together in person.
Yeah, I just like that you chose my bottle to put the herd on and not your 100%. Own bottle to put the herd
100%. I told you that in the hotel room in Philadelphia.
Oh, yes. But seriously, such a remarkable Westland. So unique. It really is one that stands out. And, we've had some of these Westlands that were... Well, let me say it this way. I've had plenty of whiskeys that were ex-tequila, ex-mezcal, and you, sometimes it does things, and sometimes it's not a lot. With this, it presents the mezcal in such a gorgeous way without hiding the Westland character. It just frames the Westland character in such a nice way. Yep.
And the thing that I keep saying about it is it's one of the best expressions of Washington pale malt that I've had from the Westland distillery.
Yeah.
It's very natural to go down the path of the 5 malt, which is phenomenal and they're rightly very well known for. The pale malt to me doesn't always speak to Westland in my mind because I'm thinking 5 malt, or I'm even thinking the peated, even when they were doing Scottish peated barley.
Yeah.
And I'm going down that path with them. This, I thought the Washington Pale Malt with that mezcal, 7 years maturation, total maturation, cask 2543, just sang, absolutely sang. And I'm so happy I was there at the right time to taste it with Bill, to get it on wax, to pick up 4 bottles.
Did he just
to share it with you and Jess and Swede Scott? Not quite that day, but it was in somewhat recently, as he says in the interview. He's got new single casks coming in every 7 to 10 days. Amazing. So people know the Jack Rose bottle shop side of things now.
Yeah.
And they know to be looking out for each new expression that comes in. He did have plenty on the top bar. There was a lot of this Westland on display. It's actually where the 4 bottles that I purchased came from. And actually, the masthead for today's episode is Bill reaching for the bottles of this bottling.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, I thought it was just framed so perfectly. I said, hold that pause. Hold that pose. And I snapped him halfway up a ladder, grabbing a Westland.
You said, don't just stand there. Let's get to it. Strike a pose. There's nothing to it. Vogue.
I did.
Vogue.
Did. And I said that as someone who doesn't even like Madonna.
I'm glad you knew it was Madonna.
That's how much I was in the moment. Yeah. Of course, it could have been Bill's spiky bra that did it for me.
Just the 2 cones.
The fact that Dennis Rodman was standing just out of shot.
So, Jason, we've got a bit of news that I wanted to bring up. And I actually wasn't even planning on bringing up any news. But I feel as if our hand has been forced. As it so often is, anytime we put new labels into the TTB. Mm-hmm. So you ready to talk about some pending SCN bottlings?
I think it makes good sense.
Let me bring in the paperboy.
Extra, extra! Read all about it! Life story of Playboy Penny! Extra, extra! Extra, extra! Read all about it! Me and that Playboy in trouble!
Usually when we find out that someone has been trolling the TTB website for new Single Cast Nation labels, it's from a particular Instagram account, which, if you know it, you know it. But this, and here's the thing. If I'm being honest, it makes me cranky. And I've talked about this before to you, to the listener. I love surprises, and I love surprising people. And when we issue a new label to the TTB and it gets approved, it's public record, and therefore it's meant for anyone to be looking over, but it ruins that possibility for a surprise.
But to me, it's not just that.
Okay.
It's the fact that we're submitting placeholder labels. And then that placeholder gets shared like it's the final thing, and then we have to undo the information that's been shared through the placeholder to then provide the information that's going on the final label. And so it's the undoing that I find kind of annoying and that makes me a little cranky. When we're still working on final notes, final tastings, getting tasting notes that are as close to bottling as possible, the labels go in before anything can kick off for the bottling. It's the order in which things are done, and that's the one that makes me a little bit cranky. Grinds my gears.
Grinds your gears, yeah. So, however, here we are, and so anyway, the way I knew the TTB had approved these labels, aside from our bottling hall letting us know that the labels had been approved, is I had gotten a text from someone I don't normally get a text from about these things. And it was a shop owner texting the Impex sales rep saying, oh my God, we have to have this for the store. And that person just forwarded the text to me, or just, the idea of the text. And so as a reminder, whether you're a shop owner or a bar owner or just a consumer, this is online only, right? So it goes through the whole 3-tiered system, right? A store ships it out. But this is an online exclusive. You will not find any of what we're about to share on store shelves. This is online only, singlecastnation.com. So we have 2 wild turkeys, 2 10-year-olds, and people will notice if you go on the TTB website, one of them says 57.75% alcohol, and the other one says 59.85% alcohol. Neither ABVs are likely correct.
Placeholders.
But we needed a placeholder. So let me tell you, and by extension, the listeners, what our 2 wild turkeys are. So again, 10-year-olds. The first one distilled September 2012 from Tyrone Warehouse K, the 4th floor. This is cask number 210145. And we think we're going to get about 160 bottles from it. We don't know. We'll see. And then the other one, this one, if memory serves, this is the one that really floated my boat the most. And this was cask 220949 from Camp Nelson Warehouse B, the 6th floor. And that was distilled in May 2013 and should be bottled in May 2023, sorry. And here's...
Unless it's bottled in June.
Unless it gets bottled in June, or July, or August, or September.
And then it won't be bottled in May.
But here, one thing that I want to point out for people who don't pay the closest of attention, we have named these 2 casks because they're both 10 years old. And upon first blush, if you don't look at the fine points of cask number and distillation date, you could get the 2 confused. So our 10-year-old from Tyrone Warehouse K is known as... Actually, let me do this in reverse. Our 10-year-old from Camp Nelson Warehouse B is called Raiders of the Charred Oak. Mm-hmm. And then our other one from Tyrone Warehouse K is known as the Cask Crusade.
So perfect.
Yeah, so there you go.
Stop calling me Junior.
What's so funny is I know that that's Indiana Jones's line, but in your Scottish accent, it sounded like what the hell's his name?
Come on, Nat. Come on, Nat.
Why am I forgetting his name?
Turning it. Scottish actor. Famous.
What's his name?
Jones's dad.
Oh, it's Roger Moore. No, it's not Roger Moore. Pierce Brosnan.
How dare
no, that's
you.
not him. The Highlander, the French guy. No, that's not him. The guy from that cancer movie. No, that's not him.
This is too much fun.
Russell Crowe. No, that's not him. What the hell's it? Sean Connery. Yeah, so Sean Connery. So when you said that Indiana Jones line, I heard it in the Sean Connery voice. Stop calling me Junior. Anyway.
Come on, Junior. Stop calling me Junior.
So those are 2 wild turkeys, but we have 2 other W's.
Indeed.
2 other W-related distilleries we've worked with. So we have another bourbon. This time it's a 6-year-old from the Woodinville Whiskey Company out of Washington State. And that was a 6-year-old actually selected by our once very own Elijah Ammon.
Yeah. It's cracking as well. Absolutely cracking. We trusted him entirely with the selection. Boom, he pulled it off. Easy peasy.
Yep.
And then we all got to be together. Jess, Sweet Scott, Elijah, you, me, whole bunch of friends. Foster, who we often read emails from.
Sweet Scott.
We all got to be together at Woodinville. It was a tremendous gathering. And Woodinville impressed. My first trip to it, loved it, couldn't have been taken care of any better than we were. It was really cool distillery, and cool product. Really, really delicious.
I was just having a little bit of a Facebook conversation with one of our nation members, maybe an hour ago, and my words to this person was that we had everybody on the team out to the distillery, and what struck me was we were in a distillery filled with people who simply gave a shit about whiskey. Mm-hmm. I love it. And the fact of the matter is, I think you can say that about any distillery, but it's so clear. Like they really wore the love for what they do on their sleeve. And that's what turns me on. Like, plenty of distilleries make great whiskey. It's really nice when people are super passionate about it. That's all.
Absolutely. And here you have an LVMH distillery.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Like, still has an American thumbprint, still has an American staff, still has incredibly, just like Jackie at Ardbeg, an incredibly welcoming front of house that make you happy to be there and spend your time there. Yeah, just wonderful all round. So, sorry, I didn't mean to derail that. I just kind of got a little bit excited about Woodinville for a moment. Forgive me. Indulge me.
But I do like what you say, right? A lot of people say, well, they're owned by LVMH. So's Ardbeg, doesn't matter. Jackie Thompson runs her distillery in a fantastic way, right?
Yeah.
They're running their distillery in a fantastic... Anyway,
so... it's like saying Remy owns Westland, right? We also went to Westland on that trip and had an amazing time at the downtown distillery. Got incredibly well taken care of. A bunch of nerds hanging out together as well. I'm trying to be... I'm not going to put words in your mouth. I'm trying to be better about it. The Balcones, ownership under Diageo, just because there's a big named, faceless global conglomerate attached to a distillery doesn't mean there's not passionate, knowledgeable people engaged with that distillery day in and day out. We must not lose track of that.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you.
Now, the final W and I'm going to call this W a win. The final W distillery. This is a new distillery for us, just like Woodinville is a new distillery collaboration with us. This is a newer collaboration as well, and this is with Westward Distillery. And this is another 6-year-old, but this is single malt from New Chart American Oak, and that's a number 2 char as well, so a slightly softer char that I think really helps that malt stand out. I'm so excited. Me, Elijah, our good friend Johnny Balderay, a.k.a. Whiskey and Donuts, went out to meet Miles Monroe and some of the other team members at the distillery. And, again, people who give a shit. So that's who we like to work with. And then finally, we are going to be bottling our second whiskey from Virginia Distillery Company. And so our first one was a 5-year-old from a first fill sherry butt. And that sherry butt held both Oloroso and PX. This time around, this is an STR hogshead. And you brought that sample back and we tasted it. I forget where we were when we tasted it.
DC.
Yeah, we were in DC. Nice little connection back to Bill Thomas here. And just freaking blown away by how magical that whiskey was. Really proud of all of these.
I'm so excited that we got... this is a brilliant use of this word. We got a buttload of nation members into VDC with our first launch, right? That first fill sherry butt, right?
Yeah.
Gave us 600 plus bottles to sell. And we did. We've gone through them all, sold them all. Now we're going to bring in... Well, I guess we need to do the math on it once it gets to the bottling hall. But you're a bit more bold than I am at throwing numbers around. But yeah,
7
it's
bottles.
under 300 is the takeaway, right?
Jason. Yep.
Right. Takeaway is it's under 300. So here we are. Like, I think this will disappear from the site real fast. Just as a heads up, that sherry butt really resonated. incredible bottling. And yeah, I'm so proud of the STR, and working with Amanda and Brian, who we had on a previous episode, where the enthusiasm that they have, more good people working at a distillery, taking the spirit really seriously, maturation really seriously, quality of their wood maturation, right, really seriously. So it's all excellent all the way down, and yeah, really excited to get them all out, as we always say. But for the one distillery that's an hour from my house, I might be even a little bit more excited. Right? It's hard not to have some local pride in this.
Fair enough. Jason, was there anything else? Oh, last thing that I'll say is, right now we have some of this scheduled for bottling in May. However, plans change all the time. Things change all the time. And so if you're interested in these, I know a lot of people on Facebook have shown interest, and I'm sure we're going to get plenty of emails off the back of this episode. Just stick with us. If you're not a Single Cast Nation member already, just sign up, singlecastnation.com. It's a free membership, and that'll give you the link to join our Facebook page. We'll put news there. We email our news out. We never spam you. We never sell emails. None of that. Just sign up. Get all of the information. If you're trusting our website for up-to-date news, remember that this comes out every other week. So you're better off becoming a member and getting news with a bit more immediacy.
But to your point, Joshua, we are technically not ready to share the information about these bottles, right?
No,
we don't share pre-bottling information. However, when the labels get shared and the nation starts asking us questions about, hey, why is there no Woodinville on your website when I saw this label come out? We got to say, okay, the reason you're seeing it is because of the reasons we've already given today in this episode.
Yeah.
But, I hope our nation, and I hope people listening to this episode don't think we are choosing to share this information this early, right? Our hands are tied a little bit, right? We're forced a little bit, which was in your introduction, right?
Yeah.
We're responding to questions that we have been getting because of the actions of those who share placeholder labels.
The only other thing that I'll add to this, and I think that this is important, and you may give me a side glance, Jason, for even bringing this up. You're so good at your side glances. We've been in collaboration with Wild Turkey for 8 years now. We're now in our 8th year of working with them. And until this year, they have not changed prices. And I think they've figured out, wait a second, we should have been slowly raising our prices with you guys. So we had always sold our Wild Turkeys for $101 per bottle, and it was just a nice nod to the distillery itself. But prices have gone up quite considerably. And here's the thing. If you're a bourbon drinker, this should not take you by surprise. This is bourbon. Yeah. This is what's happening. Yep. It took us by, we weren't ready for it, but we get it. And of course, we're going to support them. They support us and all that. But just know that we cannot charge $101 for these bottles. It will be more. We don't know exactly how much more. We'll find out once we know the number of bottles that come from each cask.
Yeah, so you led that by suggesting I might give you side eye. I'm 100% behind you sharing that with the listeners.
Do you have anything to add to our news? I hope not. I mean, if you do, that's fine. But there was another email I wanted to get to, or two.
Oh, I'm glad you've got an email in the chamber. I'll get us out of the. Oh gosh, I wish I hadn't said in the chamber. That's a Joshuaism that I don't want to adopt. But here I am. I still want to give props to Jess, to ROW. It is making it into stores across the UK now. It is at big retailers. It is at small retailers. It is at retailers who would ship to America, if that's of interest to you. They may very well ship to other countries if that's of interest to you. Germany have placed their order, and Jess is working diligently to get these bottles to Germany. So if you're listening in from Germany, should be coming your way shortly. Israel has placed their order, so Jess is working on that as well. Japan has interest. Sweden, we're in the works. And Canada, gosh, we just launched a whole bunch of stuff in Canada that is not part of this release. So Canadians have got plenty to be drinking before we get into the new livery and the new offerings for them. But we're always around the world. There's always stuff out there floating around. And the UK is definitely your friend. So, yeah, great release, great bottlings, good feedback starting to come in, which is great to hear.
So listen, I have 2 emails. Actually, it's 3 emails, but one of them is one guy.
Holy shit.
Well, we actually have far more than that. So one is an email, and then that person a day later sent a follow-up. So, and I'll tell you, the subject line made me a bit nervous. So this is from one Angus Smith, and this came in on 15th of April. And the subject line is simply fact check. Yeah, I get nervous, right? Because sometimes we say things and we think we know things, and then sometimes we don't. But
Just before you continue, I'm actually transitioning from my Glenmorangie Sauternes to my Glenmorangie Marsala.
You know what? I'm going to do the same. So this one, the Glenmorangie Marsala, again, what Jason and I are drinking were distillery exclusives bottled in 2020. So what we're having, you won't be able to find on store shelves. You may be able to find them in auction. No. But really just cast strength Glenmorangie. How great is cast strength? I mean, Glenmorangie is just a beautiful spirit as it is. But
it's the best. Cast strength Glenmorangie is the best.
Oh, so great. So great. So Angus Smith, in his fact check email, says, "Howdy, fellas. Longtime fan of the show, messaging in from a rainy Adelaide, South Australia."
Oh, there you go. From down there.
He's from down there. Yeah. It says,
wonderful.
In regards to your last episode discussing an upcoming bottling of Kregeliki, the topic of worm tubs came up. Specifically, their role. Go easy, Jason.
Angus, we don't talk about the worm tubs.
We
not
Jason,
the worm tubs episode.
Jason, this is the seventh year itch. We need to get that fucking episode just done and dusted. We're going to Scotland specifically to go to Forsyths. So in your last episode discussing an upcoming bottling of Kregeliki, the topic of worm tubs came up, specifically their role in condensing distillate. And he goes on, he says, "Just wanted to make note that worm tubs actually provide much less copper influence to distillate during condensation than shell and tube condensers," which I knew, and I know you know.
Correct.
But he's suggesting that maybe we said something to the opposite, to the contrary. But let me continue. He says, "This is largely due to the lower copper surface area to distillate vapor flux ratio. It's also far easy." What's that? Yeah, no, right. Really well said. Well said. Yep. "It's also far easier to control the temperature of the vapor as a function of length process through the condenser with shell and tubes, meaning the distillate can be kept as a vapor for longer, maximizing the thermal reaction potential with the copper by running the counterflow water in the outer shell at a lower rate and or a higher temperature.
Mm-hmm. I like this. This is graduate level. I enjoy this.
I really want us to sit with that for a second because that's how I understand it. But I love the way he was able to communicate all of that in such a succinct and graspable manner. Anyway, I thought that was fantastic. So anyways, he continues. He says, thanks for all the great content and apologies for the abject nerdism. So 2 things here.
No apologies needed.
A, he does have a follow-up, and then I'll go with B. His follow-up, which is his email that came the next day. Sorry, fellas, a correction regarding my last email. It was a very old episode of yours, episode 4 of 2017, with Mark Watt. And I'd been working my way through some of older episodes, and the detail caught my ear. So that's A. So he's got an older episode. But the reason why I said there's A and there's B, I don't recall ever saying anything to the contrary. I thought that my understanding was in line with what, and Angus, by the way, goes by Gus.
Soft G or hard G?
Oh, is it? I think it's Jus. Jus. Oh my gosh. Angus, this is our first time reading your name on here, and now your new nickname is
or
Jus.
Angus. Or Angus.
Angus. Or how about just Jus?
It's awfully close to our own dear Jess.
It is, yeah. Okay, anyway. I don't recall saying anything to the contrary. My understanding was part of the reason why there's less copper contact with that distillate going through the worm tubs is over time there's actually a bit of, well, this is one of the things, right? Over time there's a film that forms in the worm tubs as it goes through, and even the distillate as it's flowing through that worm is getting less copper contact because of that film that grew on there that you can't really clean. I mean, you can replace parts of the worm itself if you wanted to, but it goes back to that example of Klein Leash, who do not have a worm tub, but when they cleaned their system out, it got rid of the waxy texture. So you got to be real careful about what you're cleaning and when you're leaving well enough alone.
Yeah, a couple of things I would say there. Number one is you said the film grows, that the film doesn't grow, right?
Not
like that's
grow,
the wrong
but
image.
It
layers.
It
right?
layers.
It layers.
Thank you. Yes. Layers.
Right. I didn't want grow to be attached to that because then it sounds like bacteria, and that's obviously happening in the washbacks. So
correct.
There are things growing in the wooden washbacks that can be positive. Second thing is, highly recommend anybody going back to the Stephanie McLeod episode where we spoke to her about Craigellachie and worm tubs, and she kind of had a careful description of that. Third thing I would say is it's possible that we said 2 things at the same time, which is worm tubs are known for having these long worms of copper. It sounds like more copper is involved in the process, right? At least to the eye. You know, at Old Pulteney or at Pulteney where they talk about, 23 feet of worm tub, right? So that sounds like that's 23 feet of copper, right? And so I think it's, on one hand, we can talk about there being this increasing copper, this to the eyeballs abundance of copper, while then talking about there being less copper contact involved in the slow condensing of the spirit.
Yeah.
So until we have the worm tub episode, we're never really going to lay any of this to rest, and it will be a constant back and forth.
Okay. This last email came in. It actually came in February.
Sounds like us. Makes me feel comfortable.
And it was meant to be in part of the mailbag episode, which we couldn't get to simply because it was a slightly shorter episode this year. We had Jess and Elijah with us. But I wanted to bring this one up now because there's a bit of a game.
And we were driving in a car.
And we were driving in a car. Yes, we were. There's a bit of a game to this, and I know that you often like to incorporate games.
I do indeed.
Into our conversation here. So
games keep it fresh.
So this email came from Ben Homan, which I know you know the name, local Connecticut guy, and part of my local whiskey group. And he says, "Hello, JJJ and EJ."
Absolutely.
He says, "You wanted more questions, so here we go." I love
Little did he know we would get to it in the May episode.
Question number 1, and this will just have to be you and me, seeing as Jess is not here and neither is Elijah. If you could interview anyone, alive or dead, from the whiskey community, who would it be and why? This could be a distiller, a blender, a shop owner, etc. Even just someone who influenced you in some way in the whiskey community and doesn't necessarily work in the industry.
Alfred Bernard.
Okay, and why? I mean, so first off, for those who don't know Alfred Bernard, please explain who he is. And that may be the why, right?
Right. You've got the author of a 19th century, seriously thick coffee table book on the whiskey distilleries of the United Kingdom, right? Like, you and I sit here and we think about the 1980s as the last significant downturn in the whiskey industry, and single malt, specifically, and we've watched this rise through the 1990s, 2010s, 2010s, and now here we sit in the 2020s, and we've now got this 20, 30, 40 year lived history. But there's nothing for us before that.
Yeah.
And to get a chance to talk to Alfred Bernard about his lived history and what did that second half of the 19th century look like, knowing that we would then have the Patterson crash at the start of the 20th century, right?
Yeah.
How did it all look? How did it all feel? What was the tenor of the industry in the late 19th century? I just think that would be absolutely fascinating. And the fact that I'm sitting here in 2023 with his book not even an arm's length away from me. Did he think there would be longevity to the book that he put together on that trip that he took?
Yeah.
Right? The fact that I can be, and I can't think of the publication year off the top of my head, but I think it's the 1880s. And here we are 150 years removed from one another, and his words are not even an arm length away from me.
Yeah.
In Virginia, in the United States. Like, what an achievement. That's remarkable. So, that's my answer.
There you go. Yeah, I thought about this for a little bit, and one of the thoughts that I had was I would love to interview John Walker. Right? I mean...
Oh, yeah, another good one. That's excellent.
Right. You have the birth of independent bottling through a grocery store owner turned blender, right? That's so cool. And there are many other examples, but the one that I landed on was actually Harrison Ford, because he's a massive whiskey fan, a huge fan of Bruichladdich, and we get to talk about movies as well and his work. So that's who I landed on. All right, so there's a bit more to this, right?
Oh, can I just circle back for 1 second?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Alfred Bernard's book was published in 1887. Since Angus Smith fact-checked us on the worm tub. I'm just being precise in what I'm presenting,
His
at
name
least
is
for the
Jus.
next 5 minutes.
It's Just.
Just Smith.
And then question number 2 from Ben. What do you think is the most underrated distillery in the world? Who needs more praise than they get?
Why don't you go first? I went first the last time. You take this one. The trouble is, it's 50 deep. It's 100 deep, right? You and I know so many producers and so many quality spirits out there that could use a light shone on them. How do you pick one?
And is this, still standing or a distillery that is no longer around? Let's go with still standing. I think that's likely fair. Top of mind, man. So 2 come top of mind, and that would be Glen Talkers, which we've talked about many times on this podcast.
Don't say Glen Talkers. those secondary cast lists do not think it is underrepresented, underthought of. They think it's Macallan, and so Glen Talkers is not working.
Yeah, that's a good point. Why are these... Anyway.
Same is true for Mannock-Moore. Mannock-Moore pricing is ridiculous.
Mannock-Moore is crazy. No one's heard of Mannock-Moore. What's that?
Right? Mannock-Moore's cracking. Absolutely cracking liquid. But it shouldn't be sold at the same price as bloody...
No, it should. Anyway.
Jason loses the power of speech. Moving on.
And actually, I'll say 3. Oh, do I have to say just one? I have to say just one. Okay. Then I would say Ardmore.
Wow.
I think their spirit is so pretty.
Wow.
It's both floral and delicate while having a really nice sort of barbecue peaty backbone to it. It really seems to be living in 2 worlds at all times. And when I have Teacher's Highland Cream, which is, I think, a blend everybody should have on their shelves at any given time, it's the backbone to Teacher's Highland Cream, and it shines. Yeah, I think Ardmore is one people should be paying more attention to if they can.
Wow. I'm surprised because it's a Beam Suntory distillery that often shows up at tastings or at festivals right alongside Lafroig, which maybe, to your point, overshadows.
Yeah.
But if you're getting that presence, that delivery, to still be underrated is surprising to me. And I like your justification. I like you going to bat for the spirit, because the spirit is free from ownership and free from marketing. Right?
There you go.
It's the spirit being produced by the people on the ground, the people at the distillery.
Exactamundo.
I'm also surprised you went with a Scotch.
Why would you be surprised I went with the Scotch?
Is Scotch in the question?
Scotch whiskey is my favorite spirit in the world. I think there first, and then I have to force myself to every other country and every other whiskey producing country. That's where I live.
Interesting. I just think of every Scotch being more well known and more well rated than any other global spirit.
But this is, well, yes, so that's true. But if we're just thinking about distilleries that are highly underrated, Ardmore, I think, is the perfect example because it's put up there with Lafroig and with Bowmore and with Glengarry, and yet it's like that one that are like, oh, and also Ardmore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's more than that because the spirit is really nice. And I'm sure you can say the same for other countries and other distillates and things like that. But Scotch is it's my favorite drink, Scotch whiskey. So I start there, Jason.
Interesting.
All right. So that makes me think that you're going to go with a non-Scotch.
There's clearly one distillery I'm going to say here that was true 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that is no longer true. And you know exactly what I would say. Come on, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. If it's not Glen Talkers as Jason's pet project. What?
Well, it's no longer true. Everybody ignored Springbank, and now it's the pappy of Scotch whiskey.
And it's sure as hell not one I was going to say.
All right.
Come on. Glen Talkers and what were Jason's two go-tos?
Yeah, it's the or what. I can't remember what the or what was. And when you say it, I'm going to be like, oh, of course.
Given that you couldn't remember Sean Connery's name previously,
yes,
I'm not
I couldn't
taking
remember
offense.
his name.
I'm just more concerned about your health.
Oh, Jason. It's got
Joshua.
to be. If we're talking Scottish distilleries, this is my Sean Connery voice. If we're talking Scottish distilleries, it's got to be Tobermory on the Isle of Mull when they make Lecheg. Is it Lecheg?
Exactly. But holy moly, have far too many people said Lechig is underrated.
I know. It's now highly rated.
It's killing me. Absolutely killing me. So here's, I'm actually going to pull an answer that I was thinking while you were talking. I'm going to keep us in the land of Scotch. Just to keep this clean and tidy, and we can go global another time. But I absolutely love the spirit from this distillery. And it's not as prevalent in the United States as it used to be. That makes me very, very sad. It's a distillery that I've championed for a very long time. Even though in its very earliest days, it was not good. And I made no qualms about saying it wasn't good. But I think it's one of the most reliable distilleries. It now has a sister on the same island.
Yep. As soon as you said it used to not be good, and now it's quite the opposite. Now it's amazing. I know exactly who you're talking about because I couldn't agree more. Continue, please.
Right. And it's another A distillery. It's the wonderful, well, it used to be, when I knew it, the Arran Distillery. And now it's the Lochranza Distillery. And so talk about pushing water uphill. You've just gone from the underrated, not enough people know about it, Arran, to the, so remember when you didn't know Arran? Okay, now you need to know Lochranza. That's the distillery name now, Lochranza Distillery.
Yeah.
How good is their spirit? How well does it mature? How good is their wood policy under Ewan Mitchell?
Yes.
And how wonderful is it to have it in a very small holding, right? It's independent. It has a sister that's under the same independent ownership. I think it's such a wonderful, modern Scottish success story. And just when the ice cream man had said that the people were lovely that he encountered in Scotland, and it made me so very proud, Arran makes me so very proud.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Grew up in Ayrshire, looked over the Firth of Clyde at the Isle of Arran. To know there's 2 cracking distilleries on there now, that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I just wish things were different with Arran in America. And I wish that I could tell more people to go to their local stores
to get it
and grab the Aarons.
I listen, I could not agree with you more because, and I love that you highlighted the wood policy under you and Mitchell, right? Because prior to that, part of the reason why Aaron was not great is they didn't really have a solid wood management program in place. And once that was sorted, once any casks that needed to be re-racked were then re-racked and then New Spirit was put into better wood, all that wood did was highlight how gorgeous, how impeccable their spirit is. And yeah, and you know, and then there's our personal connection to the distillery where when we started this company, they had said, we want to be the first whiskey you bottle. They believed in us so much that, yes, of course that's your answer. That's perfect. Thank you for bringing them up. That's awesome.
Those are two excellent questions from Ben Holman.
Yeah. Now, listen, there's actually more, but we're getting to the end of our episode here. Maybe I'll bring up his other questions at a later date. But
you think you'll remember?
Sure.
Hey, Ben, give it a couple of weeks. If you could resend them.
Yeah, Ben, that's a good idea.
Or Joshua could save them as a PDF and put them on his desktop that he looks at every day, and we could pull it up for the next episode.
I was actually thinking...
Do it.
I was actually thinking of saving it to an ASCII file.
You could print it and then you could roll it up real tight and then you can stick it up your ass.
Moving right along, footloose and fancy free.
Getting there is half the fun. Come share it with me.
Moving right along.
We'll learn to share the load.
You and I, Jason, have to do three things. We need to thank Bill Thomas for joining us again. And Jason, thank you for going up there and spending time with Bill. A really...
Easy peasy.
Yeah, right. And he's such a good guy. And I was actually just really, really, really quickly, I was messaging with Frank Dobbins. You may not know that name, but you probably know Burb Your Enthusiasm, the Instagram handle Burb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, I actually knew the name more than I knew the handle.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Anyway, I was just messaging with Frank, who runs that, and we were just talking about what it is that Bill does for the whiskey community and industry writ large, and what he's done and how he's done that through Jack Rose and in other ways, and just how incredibly admirable it is. And I think that it should just be highlighted. We talk about
100%.
Bill being busy and all this. Like, yes, he's busy trying to make the whiskey world a better place through the things that he does, and it's incredibly admirable.
Well, also, I will be at Premier Drams. Right now, the date is July 1, July 2. I'm still waiting on confirmation on all of that. But if you're a listener of One Nation Under Whiskey and you come to Premier Drams, reference the Podcast, and I will have something very special under the table, under the counter, under whatever I'm standing next to for people who say, love the Podcast.
There's a dick joke in there somewhere, but I'll leave it at that.
You open the door, I'll enter it.
Wow. So thanks again, Jason. Thanks to the listeners. Thanks to Bill, of course.
Of course.
Thanks to the listeners. Thanks to the ice cream man, Chris Hagen, with I would say, a soft G. I know he says a hard G, but G sounds softer than J. Just saying that.
To have the confidence of a middle-aged white man. It sounds like this to me. That's what I'm going to think moving forward.
And then, of course, thanks to Ben and to Just Smith. From down there, writing in. And now the third thing that we need to do is raise our glasses and say cheers to our listeners.
Oh, crumbs, I just emptied my glass.
Why would you do that, Jason?
I was getting out of here.
I poured more of this Sauterne. What did you pour?
I poured more of the Marsala.
Oh, there you go. All right, Jason.
Our bases covered.
So to you, to Bill, to the listener, to all the people, cheers.
Cheers.